So here is a quick video to show how you can handle payroll rules that have upper and lower limits. Okay, a good example is in Kenya we have an SSF, and an SSF has an upper limit and a lower limit. Okay, in South Africa, which is what I'll be using to demonstrate, there is also a rule called UIF. Okay, UIF contributions that also has an upper limit. Okay, and for UIF, how it works is that it's 1% of your gross, but then this is the maximum. Okay, so let's say if it's 1% of 5,000, okay, that will be 50 shillings, and then this being the maximum, so the upper threshold, it means the maximum you can pay is this. So even if you earn more than this amount per month, you will still pay this. The same way we have with NSSF, that the maximum limit is 108,000. Okay, so 6% of 108,000. So here it's 1% of 17,000 rand per month. So how do you handle this in scenarios where you have no localization in South Africa, for example? So of course the best way is to look at the Kenyan computations to get more context. So I'll go to a Kenyan DB. Okay, and so go to payroll, and then I'll take you to rule parameters. Okay, so this is how you do it. Where there is an upper and lower limit, use rule parameters. This is best practice. So for NSSF NSSF, you see there is the lower limit and the upper limit. Okay, so the lower limit or the upper limit being 108,000. And another reason why it's important to have an upper limit or to have the parameters is so that you can also define the start dates. Okay, because these rules keep changing. For example, the Kenyan one, we can see it changed again on the 1st of February. Okay, so for South Africa, this started applying or being applicable, I think, in 2024. Okay, so the time or the parameters also help you define the time and the value. Okay, so how do we do it for South Africa? You come and define the parameters here, so the rule parameters. I'll say that for UIF there's an upper limit. Okay, so I give it the name, I give it the code which I'll be referring to, and then I define the start date, which is this, and the amount here. Okay, so this is the monthly gross. Once I do that, I now go to the rule itself. Okay, so the rule is here. It's called UIF employee. Okay, and it's dependent on, so the computation is Python based. Okay, so you start by defining the upper limit. Okay, the upper limit is what is defined in the parameter. So here I just call the parameter, and then I also define the gross. Okay, so the gross is what has been computed in those. So here I'm also just calling the gross, which is another rule. Okay, and then I define the result. So you start by defining the result as 0, because we will call it later here. And then what we are doing is that we are saying that if the gross is less than the limit, so let's say if my gross is 15,000, so 15,000 is less than the limit of 17,000, then my result will be 15,000 times 1%. Okay, so the 1% is defined here. Okay, otherwise, if my gross is 20,000, okay, then my UIF contribution will be 1% times the upper limit, which is 17,712. Okay, so this is how you do it. And then once you do that, we can do a quick example. So I'll just go to employees, and I'll use this employee, Lewinyo. So Lewinyo gets a wage of 15,000. Okay, so if it's 15,000, and then you come to payroll to compute. Okay, so let's see whether there are any pay slips that have been computed. So this one has been computed with 15,000, for example. Okay, so the expectation is that when I go to my computations, I can see it's 150. Okay, because it's 1%. But then if the salary of this employee changes to 20,000, for example. Okay, so I change this to 20,000. And then go back and do payroll, the pay slip. Okay, so the expectation is that, of course, it will be different. Okay, so I can do one for the month of February, and then I'll continue. I'll do it for this employee. Okay, and then when I come here to February, okay, let me even define, let me just do it manually here. Edit payslip lines. Okay, so let me say the basic is 20,000. Okay, for the case of this demo. Okay, validate that. Okay, so you see now that the contribution is now 177.12, which is the maximum, because we said this is the threshold. So 1% is this. Okay, yeah, so that's best practice. Create the rule parameter first and then call the parameter in the rules. Thanks.